A mother almost kicks her daughter out of the house when she comes home with a ragged doll. Perplexed by her mother's reaction, the little girl decides to find out why she's so angry about the doll, unaware it will reveal a long-hidden secret. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Beyond the Ordinary, like, and share this video with your friends. It might brighten their day and inspire them to do good. 11-year-old Florence was always a sweet and caring girl with a big heart. She could give the last thing to those in need, and everyone knew it, whether it was her neighbors or her classmates and friends. For instance, Florence was returning home one afternoon when she noticed a beggar on the streets. Her mother had given her some money to buy her favorite chocolates, but when she saw the beggar, she generously offered him all of her money. Seeing her daughter's generosity and kind-hearted nature, Florence's mother, Barbara, felt very proud of her upbringing. Barbara was only 16 years old when she became pregnant, but her so-called boyfriend refused to accept responsibility for their child, so she raised her daughter on her own. When Florence started growing up, though, she became curious why she didn't have a family like her friends. Then Barbara told her about being an orphan and how her father had abandoned them. Little Florence was disappointed to learn that her father had left them, but she was happy that she had her mother with her, who loved her and gave her everything she wanted. So the little girl did her best not to let her mother down. But one day, Florence decided to disobey her mother, which changed everything. When Florence got home from school that day, she ran straight to Barbara, holding a doll in her hands. "Mommy, Mommy," she cried happily. "Look what I got." "What is it, honey?" Barbara inquired, looking up from her phone and turning to face Florence. "It's my doll Julie, Mommy," Florence said, showing her the doll, dressed in a lovely light orange dress and with brown plaited hair. "There was a poor old lady selling it, Mommy. She needed money, so I bought it from her," Florence proudly added, glad to have helped someone in need. But Barbara's reaction was not what she had anticipated. When she saw the doll, she lost her cool. "Get rid of that doll immediately, Florence. And don't even think about approaching that woman again. Is that clear?" "But, Mommy," Florence had only begun to speak when Barbara interrupted her. "If you don't get rid of that doll, I will kick both you and that doll out of the house. Since when did you start answering back to me?" "I'm sorry, Mommy," Florence mumbled. "I was just helping her. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I don't want to listen to anything, Florence," Barbara yelled. "Throw that doll out right now. Understood?" Florence's eyes welled up at this point because she had never seen her mother so angry. She adored the doll and didn't want to throw it away, so she requested her mother once more to allow her to keep it. "Please, Mommy," she begged. "I will be a good girl. I will never trouble you. Can I please keep it?" But Florence's pleas fell on deaf ears. "No, honey, you are throwing that doll away, and that's it," Barbara declared adamantly. Florence had no choice but to get rid of the doll at this point. She promised her mother she'd return it to the old lady the next day on her way home from school. However, she was really hurt by the way her mother had yelled at her. She hugged the doll tightly and went back to her room crying. "Sorry, Julie," a sad Florence whispered to the doll in her room. "I don't know why Mommy didn't like you. She never gets angry. She has bought me so many dolls before. I am sorry I will have to return you," she said. Her gaze was drawn to the doll's dress, which bore the initials. Florence was only 11 years old, but she was pretty smart, and her mind immediately went to the possibility that the doll could be Williams, her surname. "Does Mommy know who the old lady who makes these dolls is? Is that the reason why she told me not to meet her again?" She wondered and decided to talk to the old woman to find out the truth. And before leaving for school the next day, she took her mother's photo with her. She returned to the spot where the old woman usually stayed, selling the rag dolls she'd sewn. She dashed up to her and gently asked, "Hi, do you mind if I ask you a question?" "Sure, young lady," the poor woman said with a faint smile. "Do you know who my mother is?" Florence asked her immediately, holding up the picture she was carrying. "Mommy was upset with the doll I bought from you and told me not to meet you again." When the elderly lady saw Barbara's photo, she burst into tears. Florence was surprised by her reaction and offered the old lady her hanky. Please don't cry. I'm sorry. Are you sad because Mommy asked me not to meet you again? No, dear, the woman said as she wiped away her tears. It's because your mother is my daughter. What? Florence was taken aback. Mommy said she is an orphan and she doesn't have parents. Well, your mother wasn't entirely wrong when she said that. I deserve it. It's my fault, the elderly said and began narrating her whole story. It turned out the old lady's name was Deborah, and she was Bara's mother. When Bara became pregnant, her stepfather gave her an ultimatum: either keep the baby or leave the house. Barbara begged Deborah to let her keep the child and stay in the house, but Deborah couldn't help her because their house belonged to Barbara's stepfather. Bara chose to keep her child and left the house that day, severing all ties with her parents. Later, Barbara's stepfather kicked Deborah out of his house because he had fallen in love with a young woman. Poor Deborah became homeless. She started making and selling rag dolls, just like she used to make for little Barbara, to earn a living. Later, she was able to afford a tiny hut where she spent almost her entire life. I hoped that one day my daughter would forgive me and come to meet me, Deborah explained to Florence. However, that never happened, so I would leave my initials on the doll in the hope that it would help me find her. Florence couldn't believe it when she discovered the old lady was her grandmother. She felt sorry for her and wanted to help her, so she devised a plan. She invited Deborah to accompany her home. Deborah hesitated a little, embarrassed by what she'd done, but she couldn't shake the desire to see Barbara after so many years. She accompanied Florence to her house, but Barbara lost her cool when she saw her. Mom, what the hell are you doing here? Please leave. I have nothing to do with you, honey, Deborah said, teary-eyed. I'm sorry for what I did. I never... No way, Mom. Barbara interrupted her. What you did to me will live with me for the rest of my life. I'm sorry, but please leave. She grabbed Florence's hand and pulled her inside, about to slam the door in Deborah's face. But just then, Deborah intervened. I've already paid for what I did, honey. I kicked you out of the house, and then I was evicted by my husband. I'd just come to see you. I'm glad you and your daughter are happy. Barbara was angry at Deborah, but her heart melted when she heard her story. She couldn't let her leave, seeing her dire condition, so she brought her inside. She offered her some tea and warm clothes to wear. She also forgave her as she didn't want to repeat her mother's mistake by kicking her out of the house when she was in need. And from that day, Deborah moved in with Barbara and little Florence. Deborah is still selling her dolls, though, on an online website that Barbara helped her set up.